Welcome to Capitol View, the program where we talk about state issues, sometimes federal issues, and how they just might affect your life. Boy, are our lives in the balance these days. There's a pandemic. There's a governor who's interested in it. There's a lot of people who don't like what he's doing. And we hear there's an election coming. To discuss that with me, I'm Bernie Schoenburg from the State Journal-Register. With me today are Hannah Meisel. She is State House reporter for NPR Illinois, based in Springfield. Hannah, welcome back.
Glad to be here.
And Peter Hancock is here. He is State House reporter for Capitol News, Illinois, another person letting us know what's going on in Springfield. Peter, welcome to you.
Thanks, Bernie.
Peter, let's go to you first. A very interesting turn of events as the state fights the battle against the virus, but also to try to open schools and businesses. The Illinois High School Association did not like what it heard from Governor Pritzker this week about basketball in particular. Why don't you bring us up to speed? This was a very interesting chain of events, I thought.
Yeah, Governor Pritzker and the Department of Public Health put out new guidelines this past week for winter sports. They had previously issued guidelines for fall sports. The big change was the sport of basketball was moved from medium risk, which allows you to do some competitive play, to high risk, which means you can only do non-contact practice and training and drills. So it basically calls off or postpones the fall-winter basketball season, not just in high schools and junior highs, but also in recreation leagues, adult leagues, everything except college and professional sports. We're now in the 8th month of the pandemic, are we? Something like that. And a lot of people are suffering from what they call pandemic fatigue. And so as the governor has been issuing, new mitigation orders for certain regions, and this thing about the winter sports came out, there's been a lot of pushback. And people are just feeling very weary of this. And so the High School Activities Association says, no, we're going ahead with the basketball season anyway. The governor is saying you could be opening yourself up to legal liability, and it's really going to be up to the individual school districts to decide whether or not they want to put teams on the field or on the court.
Right. And let's see, as I understand it, wrestling has been put off until like spring and summer, or at least it's not going to happen in winter at all. Hockey was also put off, but you can still do bowling, swimming, diving, cheerleading, and dance, if I get that correct, because they are not particularly contact.
Yeah, individual sports where people are fairly well spaced anyway, those are considered low-risk sports. But the ones where people are up close, breathing in each other's face, having very close personal contact, which is obviously the whole point of wrestling, as well as a number of other sports, they're just considered too dangerous. And so the guidance from the Public Health Department and from the State Board of Education is to don't do them.
Yeah, boy, but that sure yielded some angry responses, certainly coaches, athletes, and people looking at other states. And the governor has been kind of trying to say all along, well, yeah, we're tougher than other states, but, well, and maybe we can get back to that. But Hannah, I know that you're very good at watching the numbers on COVID-19 in Illinois. The governor could say for a long time, and I think Illinois did do better than many states, but now we're seeing the kind of surge that's happening at other places across the country. And the new, within the last few months when the governor put Illinois into 11 regions, boy, what is it, 8 now that are under stronger restrictions, and maybe the one with Springfield, Region 3 coming next.
Mm-hmm. Right. I've frankly been just bowled over by how bad things got so quickly, because for a while there in the summer, we were doing very well. And honestly, there were parts of the summer that I fooled myself into thinking, well, maybe there won't be a second wave. Maybe this is it. Maybe we, controlled the virus enough. No, this virus is pernicious. And, it comes back with a vengeance. Of course, the weather is much colder now, and people have moved to socializing inside because you can't stop people from socializing. It was really, really hard to do so this spring. We're all social animals, even the introverts among us. Like, it's very difficult. And so it's a whole new phase, it's a whole new wave, and honestly, it could be worse than in the spring. Now, to the governor's claim that we are doing better than other states, that is true. The positivity rate bears that out. We are somewhere, yesterday we filmed this Thursday morning, so Wednesday, the latest numbers say that we are like at 8%. That includes the mass saliva testing program at the University of Illinois, which that low positivity rate drags down the positivity rate of the entire state. Anyway, but like, we're still doing a lot better than our neighbors. Wisconsin is something like 28%. Iowa is something like 26%.
Wow, that means that a quarter of the people in those states who test are positive
yes.
for COVID is what you're saying. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. So we are doing better, and we have a very robust testing program. But in terms of raw numbers, we are the largest state in the Midwest, and the case numbers themselves, they are pretty staggering, because even in the spring, when we were going through a first wave, we didn't know what we were doing. We're not doing nearly as much testing because we didn't have the capacity. And so when you see new case counts every day this week, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, it is alarming.
Yeah, and in Sangamon County, I know it's been over 100 for various days recently. I think it was 109 in a recent day, and 111 in another recent day. And it used to be, we were under 10 many days when we thought that we were through the main part. Hannah, I'll stay with you for a minute. Bars and restaurants under the level, the move back in mitigation that I think 8 regions of the state are now in, and more regions may get there. That means no indoor seating in bars, no indoor service, in restaurants, and you're seeing somewhat of a revolt at various places in the state where public officials and officials with the industry are saying, no, you're keying on us too much. That's not right, and don't blame us because other entities are where the virus can grow, and show us more evidence that you need to pick on an industry that is teetering. Hannah, that's right? That industry is really was on a bit of a rebound, and this could be a very difficult time.
Right. Not just very difficult, it could frankly be the death knell of many beloved establishments throughout the state. And, by and large, those places are small businesses, and it's, they don't have the backing of being like a franchise where, possibly the franchise could, make some loans to individual establishments. I honestly don't know how that works, but like, to be a small business is by definition to be out there on your own. And it's really difficult for them because, okay, a couple of things here. So, officials coming out, like Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot this week, coming out and saying, I'm going to try to change the governor's mind. That is, I don't understand her calculation there, because the metrics have been the metrics for more than 3 months, and right. Mitigations with, there was an alteration back in August when Region 4, the Metro East region, wasn't getting better even under mitigation. So the governor decided to adjust there's 3 tiers of mitigations, because he doesn't want to go back to a whole stay-at-home order. He doesn't want to move the entire state back to phase 3, for a lot of reasons. But frankly, I think it would open him up to even more litigation that he doesn't want to deal with. Yeah. And so to claim that, we're taken by surprise when the metrics have been the metrics, the numbers have been creeping up, I think that's acting in bad faith. And to say, I'm going to try to change the governor's mind, I think it looks weak when you're not going to get to. However,
yes,
the criticisms from the Restaurant Association and the individual establishments, totally valid. They have been, by and large, restaurants and bars have been playing by all the rules. They've reduced their capacity to 25%. They have spent thousands of dollars on PPE, plexiglass installations, in some cases, those no contact touch, no touch payment systems. And they're doing everything right. And still, at the end of the day, they're being told, I'm sorry, but the very act of taking off your mask, eat or drink, spreads the virus. And frankly, sorry.
Yeah,
and then the third thing here is that, the governor keeps presenting kind of conflicting messages, because he'll say, okay, restaurants and bars are the main spreader of, the virus. And then the next day he said, well, actually it's private events in the home. Well, they can't control what goes on in people's private homes. And so the next best thing is, saying, I'm sorry, we're going to have to shut down indoor dining and drinking in bars and restaurants. But there's now this wave of people who are like, show us the contact tracing data. And the state is not quite ready to do that. And I think that's going to be something that they're going to have to contend with, because it's like, we've had this contact tracing system supposedly up and running, since the spring or summer, but because it's run by local health departments and it's a very fractured system, I don't think the data is ready.
Yeah. Well, and let me just say, I know you said nice things about bars and restaurants. I think there are some out there who are pretty defiant, and there are some crowds that, not that I'm hanging out in restaurants these days, but, just picking up food. I've seen some crowds that were bigger than they were supposed to be. And I know that there have been some local festivals in Christian County and Menard County, where the organizer said everybody would be apart, and you see pictures from those events, and it looks like a Trump rally. Anyway, or a demonstration in the street for Black Lives Matter. Take either side you want. Peter, let's just talk about the response to this stuff, and we can get back to sports too, because players, coaches, they want the opportunity to have the kids compete, to get the scholarships, get revenue for schools, if that's a part of the equation. Obviously, you're not going to have crowds watching these games anyway, and so it's not a revenue generator like in the Big Ten, for example. But legislators, certainly on the Republican side, are pushing back strongly, and I don't know, the governor is making these decisions, and you have Republicans going online with reporters almost every day saying why he's wrong and why the legislature should be more involved. Obviously, it'll take a while to have people come together after this, and I don't know if there are long-range political damaging things happening here to the governor or to just the relationships.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's frustrating for Republicans is that the legislature has been cut out of the process. And many of them feel that the statute gives the governor authority to declare an emergency for 30 days. But beyond that, after 30 days, you should have time to be able to get lawmakers back in, especially in a statewide emergency like this. This has been going on for months and months and months, and they've been kind of locked out of the process. And many of them have legitimate, serious questions about the decisions that are being made, about the data that's behind it. The Pritzker administration, they say, has not always been very transparent with the data, especially regarding bars and restaurants. Where is the evidence that bars and restaurants are the sources of this particular surge in coronavirus cases? Many of them say it's private social events, it's nursing homes, retirement centers, places like that. But it's bars and restaurants that are being punished for it. And I think they just want to have more of a say in how the state addresses this. With regard to sports, this is one of the things that's just kind of fascinating about American culture. Somebody described it to me one time as the fact a mascot is a very difficult thing to kill. Mm-hmm. People get very attached to their mascots. They want their kids trying out for scholarships. Most kids playing high school sports are not going to get sports scholarships. They're just out there to play and to have a good time. and to make friends. And it's a socializing event for the whole community. And people are just very frustrated that this kind of stuff is being called off.
Indeed they are. I'm going to stick with you, Peter, that as we come up to the election, which is Tuesday, believe it or not, and aren't we happy that all of this is going to be behind us? One big thing on the ballot is the progressive income tax amendment. It is a key for Governor Pritzker to try to get this passed so the rich can pay more. There have been millions and millions of dollars spent on both sides, with real people telling us through our TV screens on commercial stations that, those, don't believe those politicians are going to tax everybody, or let the rich people pay their fair share finally. And Peter, they need 50% vote of everybody in the election, or 60% vote of those voting on the question. Is that going to happen? Any idea? How's it looking?
I haven't seen the polling. My general sense is that it might be a fairly close vote. And this brings out an interesting thing about the 2020 elections and the volume of mail-in balloting that's taking place. We've already had somewhere in the neighborhood of 2.7 million advance ballots cast.
That's unbelievable.
Illinois is a state where, as long as your mail-in ballot is postmarked by Election Day, they can take up to 2 weeks to count that ballot for it to come in. So if it's a close election, we may not know until 2 weeks after the election whether or not they hit that 50% mark of everybody who voted, or whether or not they hit the 60% mark of all the people who voted on that issue. I really don't think we're going to know the results of that ballot issue until well after Election Day.
Very interesting. Hannah, the election in general, we've seen there are states that have had to go to Supreme Court with battles about when ballots can be counted. And I guess a couple states, including, I think, Pennsylvania, were just granted 3 days after the election. Since the changes and the hanging Chad election of the year 2000 in Illinois, we really have been progressive in a different way on this issue that anybody can get a mail-in ballot, which used to be called an absentee ballot. You don't have to have a reason like you used to have. I won't be home, or I'll be busy that day. Anybody can do it. Now everybody's doing it because of the pandemic and encouragement. And anything, as Peter mentioned, postmarked by Election Day, November 3rd, that arrives at the election office by the 17th, 2 weeks later, will be counted. So we're not going to have a full count until that time. And then it's even a little time after that the county clerks and other election authorities have to get their final numbers together and get them to the State Board of Elections, which does not do a count on election night itself. It's each individual county or office. So anyway, I've, with all the talk, and certainly from President Trump, about election fraud and this and that, Illinois has been going pretty smoothly, hasn't it, Hannah?
Yeah, I mean, I have not seen a ton of major issues. One thing to note is that I believe it was last week, I saw some reporting on some ballots being distributed late in suburban Cook County, which is a separate election authority from the city of Chicago. But I mean, all in all, I think, my gosh, they had a very tight timeline because the legislature passed this law, vastly expanding vote by mail in Illinois in late May. And what that law would do would require local election authorities to mail vote by mail applications, not the actual ballot, to folks that voted in any one of the last 3 elections. So that's about 5.5 million people, I think. And that's a lot. And I remember tuning into a virtual State Board of Elections meeting, I think in June. And honestly, there was some doubt there from the policy folks, whether they'd be able to pull this off. And so far, so good. And I wonder if it'll make for a permanent sea change. I mean, states like Washington and Oregon and Colorado, and I think there's one more out west.
Maybe Utah.
Yes, Utah. Mm-hmm. they have all adopted, all vote by mail, like primarily vote by mail. And it's, it's about changing people's norms and expectations. I think in Chicago, in the city of Chicago especially, there is a grand tradition of going to the polls on election day. And, there's all types of, legend and lore and things that were not so good about how elections have been done in years past. But it is a grand tradition, and people are attached to those things, like going to the polls and getting a sticker and showing their kids that they're civically participating. But it's also convenient. I still prefer to go to the polls, but who knows if my taste will change in 5-10 years.
Right. And what's interesting is just nationally, and again, President Trump sets different agendas than many have in the past. And when he talks about mail-in ballots are so dangerous, this and that, he's a Republican. The Sangamon County Republican Party and the Sangamon County Democratic Party have both promoted this year mail-in ballots. We have a Republican Sangamon County Clerk, Don Gray, who got a couple of drop boxes, which was with agreement of all the parties. He's been very happy to promote early voting, telling people get their ballots in early. And unlike some states where they can't count until late, he's had teams of election judges every day for weeks counting ballots as they come in through the mail and through drop boxes so that they will be ready with results right at or shortly after the polls close next Tuesday. And you can just imagine, and you have to open every envelope and compare the signature on the envelope that it's in, the sleeve that it's in, to the signature on file, just so the judges say, yes, this is the voter and it's real. That could take a long time. So for those states that don't have advanced counting like Illinois allows, I can imagine much more trouble, but Illinois seems to be in a pretty good place with this. Peter, one thing that's been going on during this election season, interestingly, is the Black Caucus from the legislature has been talking about various policy proposals that they hope to bring up in the veto session, which will come after the election. Do we think a package will be put together on, criminal justice reform and other things to make life better throughout the state after this election is done?
It looks like that is going to happen. They've been having a number, at least on the Senate side, and some House members have participated as guests, what are called subject matter hearings, where they bring in experts and witnesses to talk about these issues. Under the rules, the Senate committees are allowed to meet remotely, but they can't take any action. The House side doesn't even have that rule. So basically all they're doing is hearing things out. But you're right. I mean, we're coming up to the veto session, which is typically reserved for dealing with bills that were vetoed by the governor. This year, they don't have any. So they've got some time on their hands. And one of the other interesting dynamics is that the Legislative Black Caucus has a lot of leverage right now. They're saying, we want our package to be looked at, to be taken seriously, and to have hearings. House Speaker Michael Madigan needs the Legislative Black Caucus. If he doesn't get them, he's not the speaker anymore. So he really doesn't have much of a choice but to put their agenda on the floor and to at least take it seriously and listen to their concerns. So, I think there will be a package of bills that comes forth. I think there will also be some legislation dealing with the coronavirus response. But those are basically the two issues they have on the table. And the Black Caucus has a lot of leverage right now.
Okay. Hannah, let's talk a little about the election coming up in some of the bigger races. And one of them, of course, is President. Hillary Clinton won Illinois by 17 points when most of the country decided they didn't want Hillary Clinton in 2016. So it's looking pretty good for Joe Biden in Illinois right now. Another race near the top doesn't seem to be close either, and it's for U.S. Senate with Dick Durbin running for another 6-year term. But Willie Wilson is also on the ballot under a party of his own name. He's a businessman and philanthropist in Chicago. And Mark Kern is the Republican. There's also a Green Party candidate, David Black, and a Libertarian, Daniel Maloof. And we've got less than a minute, Hannah, but Willie Wilson, if he gets 5% of the vote, and he has done some advertising, I even saw an ad downstate, there will be a new Willie Wilson party in Illinois. So I know Dick Durbin has been trying to keep hoping Willie Wilson does not get 5% just to confuse voters in future races with a third party. Any thoughts if that might happen?
Right. We saw this happen several years ago. I think like 2014, Libertarians got to field their own person, something like that. And it does make a difference in close races. And, it's not just that it would be in the Senate race or whatever. It would be up and down the ballot.
Right, because it was a statewide race. Yeah.
So is that a danger? Maybe. I mean, Willie Wilson is pretty popular, but I think that the Democrats in a solidly blue state can deal with it.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. Hannah Meisel, thank you for your thoughts. Peter Hancock, it's been good talking with you. I'm Bernie Schoenburg. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time on Capitol View.